Hello, welcome to a new Ostrich video, and today we are in Catalina Airport, parked with this beautiful DC-3. But today I don't want to go flying with you. Today I want to show you how to make a beautiful skin like the one of our A2A Comanche you can see here. So really nice, and not only the outside skin, but also if we go to the virtual cockpit, how to personalize your aircraft further, like you can see the coal monoxide detector or our personalized logbook and small details like this. So to do this, we have to leave our sim. So let's exit prepared. Yes. And to make your livery, you have to download your paint kit. And in case of the A2A aircraft, you get it as a forum, so just download it there. And also get some inspirations by the liveries that are already done, and if you like one, just download it. Most paint kits are delivered as a PSD file, so you will need Photoshop. Then you will need a tool that can create a DDS texture out of a Photoshop file. In my case, I have DXT-BMP, just found it on the internet, but you can also find plugins for Photoshop that let you save directly from Photoshop a DDS texture. And then I use Adobe Illustrator to make the livery. That's not necessary because you can paint directly in Photoshop, but I like Illustrator because I'm just much more used to work with it, and also I can work with vectors. And this advantage I will show you in a second. But first, when we start, I would recommend you to just make a folder. Here we have the Comanche, and just create a folder and name it with your registration. In this case, I take test, not the registration, but something that is unique to this aircraft. And then we go to our paint kit. You will get two different options. You will get a version named T for texture, and you will name a version named S for specular that gives you the reflective effects on your aircraft. So first we need just a texture file. So we open it up. This maybe takes a second. And here we have a blank texture. And the first thing I would do is now put on the mesh and save all of this as a JPEG. And then you can leave it on, or you can turn the mesh up, but then enable our versions that are supplied with the aircraft, like this blue one, save it as a JPEG, or this type, and so on and so forth. So just play with it and also use versions you downloaded, and because this is really important work. Because this is really important, what you see here is a two-dimensional representation of your three-dimensional aircraft. And this poses some problems because, first of all, it's confusing where the different parts is, and so given paint jobs help you to identify how different parts fit together. It's also that not all parts are at the same scale, and also not all parts are curved the same. So by analyzing a bunch of different liveries, you will find your way around and be able to plan your livery. And save this up. And then we go back, and in this case I open Illustrator, and because this is a lot of work and it can take usually a weekend or something more, I just take my old file, and here you see the livery, how I designed it in Illustrator. And I like to use Illustrator because, first of all, I'm very used to it, and this is an important point. Use the tools you are good with. And second of all, with Illustrator, I can use vectors, and vectors are really easy. So especially for curves, let's for example just make true points, and then I define the surges, and now I can do really nicely curves with it and play with it really easily. So now I completely overdone it, but okay. For curves, vectors are much better than painting with pixels, while Photoshop is a pixel-based program, Illustrator is a vector-based program. But anyway, you see here are the textures and in a lot of different layers. Down here I have several paint jobs from before, some from the download, some directly from the paint kit, and it helps you to find your way around, to get some marker points to align all your liveries and so on and so forth. And what is also important, what makes your placements in Photoshop much easier, above I have a file where I have on each corner a little white square so that everything is full, and when I transfer it into Photoshop that I don't have problems with alignment. If you are finished with this, you can save it, and then we go back to Photoshop and you will find a section that says paint here. So we open this and now just place our Illustrator file in, and so we go to place, find our folder, and just take the old one and say OK, place. And because of the white corners, it places automatically perfectly on place. So I say yes, and now it's done. Now I can just go turn it from a vector part into a pixel part. You don't really have to do this. And now I can play with the different blend modes, because at the moment it's normal. And so now I can play with the blend modes, see how the different effects look. For example, light. You see some changes here, but nothing that really blows me away that I like. What usually works very nicely is the multiply. And then as you see now, the colors are looking very, very freshly. So to avoid this, I make a color adjustment here and just reduce the saturation of it a bit so that it looks a little bit more weathered. Press Alt to just apply to this folder. And you also can use now duplicate this folder, use some different blend modes and combine different blend modes and so on, and just play with it and look what looks good. Now, in order for my DXT tool to make the transfer, I have to save it as a Tagra file. So we go to Save and then select Tagra, save it, and then we say yes, 32 pixel and OK. And then we open our specular file. So we go back to the paint kit, the specular version. Now, you not necessarily need it, but it's very helpful. So we just place our file, place, OK. And you see again, thanks to this white box, it fits perfectly. But now you see it looks a bit off, and in a specular it is just how strongly different parts reflect. So for example, our tail number is black, so it reflects less light as the white parts of our aircraft. And this is the information needed in black and white, so we just go here and make an adjustment that says black and white. And we can play with different filters, but this looks good. And again, we can look if a different blend mode looks better, because here you see the white is a little bit too pronounced and it should be like the normal white of the aircraft. So we can look to get different effects. This is maybe too dark, so let's soft light that looks much better. But again, play and see what looks nice. You also can reduce opacity to get lighter or darker effects of it. And again, save this as a Tagra file. Now we have finished our outer livery. Then you open your tool up, you go File, Open, and this usually takes a while. Then you go to Image, Flip Image and Alpha, and then you can save it as a DDS texture. Make sure you select DXT5. and let's save it in our test folder and save. And you of course do this with the specular file as well. If you are now finished, it's time to place your livery into the sim. So in order to do this, we have to go to our file, go to the drive you installed your simulation on. So in my case, it's D. And then you have basically two options. The very classical way, like from the FSX days, is you go to the folder sim objects. If you have aircrafts from A2A, they actually do it the way it's intended for the newer versions of prepared. So in this case, you have to go to users, user again, documents, P3D add-ons, A2A, and here you have your sim objects again. So you selected airplanes and then select your aircraft, and then we create a new folder. And this folder has to be named texture dot, and then a name you want to give them. I would recommend you to just take the registration, or in this case, because it's a test, call it test. Now, in this folder, we have to now place our livery, our test livery, copy it, and place it in the texture test. And you, of course, do the same thing with the specular file as well. And then you go to one of your standards. Somewhere you will find, in one of the origins, you will find this texture file. You just copy it and place it in your folder. And the information that you find here is very basically, so this gives you your fallback route. So if you in this folder isn't a texture is needed, here it's written fallback to this folder, fallback to this folder, and so on and so forth, so that you can also find missing textures for some internal parts of the aircraft, and so on and so forth. The next thing we have to do now is go to our aircraft config data. So we go here, we copy the first part, and then we scroll down until we find general. And before general, we insert this file. We look up the last number, so this is 5, so we call this thing 6, and give it the title we want to do. So let's say test. So this is the name tag, it will show up in your sim. And then really important, here we have to, it's a texture file, we have to use the name we gave our folder after the dot. So in our case, it is test. And this way, know your 6th version will be looking up first in the test folder. And then you also can change the points here, like your ATC ID and so on and so forth. But this is enough to make it running. So let's save it. And if we go to the sim now, we can open up our files, and at the moment I just have favorites, so we have to unclick this and now look for our aircraft Comanche test. Here we have it, and we can look it, and what I would recommend you now is load it up and take a good look at all parts of the aircraft, because you will find that some lines doesn't align perfectly and that you find a mistake there or missing parts there, and you have to correct this. And this can take quite some time. So in the case of this livery, is the logo behind here to match the tail fin with the rudder perfectly, or perfectly enough, to be honest. That took like probably 2 days, just adjusting a little bit, like a millimeter up, a millimeter down, tilted a little bit, and so on and so forth. So that's good. And then you have to adjust your livery from the outside. But at the moment, we still have our standard cockpit. So how to personalize this? So if we go back to our folder, you will find a folder called texture in here. And in the texture folder, you see here, you have names like VC1, VC2, VC3. These are your virtual cockpits. So you copy these ones in a different folder, and then you use your conversion tool to make it from a DDS texture into a file Photoshop can read. And after you've done this, I just take our other example. You have the file, and in this case, then add some stickers, textures, and I think about the history of the aircraft. So for example, it's a piston engine aircraft, so a lot of them have your coal monoxide detector. So I looked coal monoxide detectors up, find one online, cut it out, made the date that it will fit, and so on and so forth, and just placed it there. And then also, it's an old aircraft. It probably changed owners. So maybe you have a Piper dealer who sold it and left his little mark. You have sticker with your registration, and so on and so forth. So I placed all of them. Then let's take the registration sticker, for example. And because it's on its own level, I can just click in here and everything else except the sticker is selected. So I can go to the selection and invert the selection. Now only the sticker is selected. And if I take now a black color, a nice brush, adjust the size and the opacity, so probably take it down to 20 or just 10, and I can paint over it. And because only the sticker is marked, let me go back to the nicer part, I will paint only on the sticker. And so if you are very careful on the edges, you will get a really nice effect, like dirt is piling up on the edges of the sticker. So that's this. Then you save this again and turn it back into a DDS texture. And also, just to show you as a second file, here we have the handbook. It's just a Comanche handbook I have, and I scan it and I put a sticker of the flight school in San Francisco on it to just give it a little bit more personal touch. So think a bit about the story, the history the aircraft lived through it, and which marks it left on your aircraft. Then you save this as DDS textures, same with the outer livery, and you place this in your test folder again, and you are practically done. And then you just enjoy a beautiful new aircraft or beautiful old aircraft, depending on which weathering state you choose to do, and just enjoy flying with it. So this was it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And if you have questions, comments, as always, let me know down below, and I try to answer as quickly and correctly as possible. And all that's left to say now is thanks for watching and see you at the next time. Bye bye.